So the first question you asked me of this set was the relationship between internal accountability and external accountability. It was pointed out that you have a traditional external accountability system of assessment. It's not high stakes, but it's there. What do you do with it? And then the internal accountability, which is a concept that we've developed following Richard Elmore, is the accountability that people have for themselves, especially as groups. So it's about transparency. It's about I'm doing this, and people can see what I'm doing within my school. There's an openness to it, where there's a specificity to it about what we're doing. And the most important of the two accountabilities, we know from research, is internal accountability, because if it doesn't exist, external accountability doesn't make much of a difference. You can't force people to do something very, very readily. So I want to say and emphasize, keep going on the internal accountability. Internal accountability is about improvement. And Richard Elmore, the originator of this, said in doing it, he said, internal accountability logically precedes external accountability. That's a very important insight. Logically precedes, in other words, if you don't have it, you'll never get external accountability. So our recommendation is build up your capacity to be specific about what you're trying to accomplish, its relationship to students and their learning, and the indicators of progress or not, and have that as transparent and part of what you're doing, and that is what the project does. And as you do that, pay more and more attention to the external accountability system. In traditional systems like Uruguay, I think we do see a transition. And I think most of the policymakers would say that, the people in the Ministry of Education, that the deep learning is part of a welcome transition to traditional schooling. So this external system will catch up, let's say. And I think you should pay attention to it, but don't be thrown by it. Focus on internal, link it to external in that sequence, and you'll make a lot of progress. So that's one of the four. The second one was how do you, it's similar in some ways, it's how do you pursue new pedagogies for deep learning in a very traditional education system. And I think this is tricky a little bit, but you seem to have mastered it because you've been going for several years now. And you have, in fact, gone ahead. And I think this is a tribute to CBAL and also to the Ministry of Education and the government, that you've worked out a two-way win-win partnership between the two of you. So you're not clashing. You're really working in the same direction. So I think what we see is, instead of waiting for the traditional system to change, you're developing innovation within it. And this provides a little bit of attention, but it's a positive, it's a constructive tension. And that what will happen in this is that it will reconcile upward, if a way it would put it. So you begin then to see the fruits of the internal innovation, which I call the internal accountability system, interface with the emerging reformulation of the traditional system. So don't be worried about it, but figure out how to connect the two. The third question was very interesting to me because I didn't think of us that way, but the question was some groups in Uruguay see our 6 C's as, in capitalist terms, that we're preparing students for the market of employers. And that's a very good question. And we always want internal debate and consideration. It could happen that way. That is, you could do the 6 C's and it could be seen, this is what employers want, and this is all great to have that. But that's not the way we formulate it, and it's highly unlikely it will turn out that way for the single reason I'm about to say. Our whole raison d'etre is engage the world to change the world. So the students, who will be the graduates here, the teachers, and the whole education force is mobilized to be an agent of change, not an agent of the capitalist system, not an agent of the employers, but to be autonomously effective, individually and together. So I think I'm glad the question was raised, because this should be made explicit all the time. And students as change agents, it's about helping humanity. It's about transforming education. It's about attacking inequity. It's about the fact that the world of education right now is unstable. The world itself is unstable. It needs help. And that help is best formed by young people who are well educated in the 6 C's and who see themselves and learn as change agent. So keep that question coming, and keep articulating what is the real purpose of the 6 C's and how do we implement them effectively. So that's important. Then the fourth question, the last question of this set, was about people went back to my book Stratosphere, I think it was 2013 or so, where I said there's technology as one force, a digital big force in society. There's change, knowledge, and leadership, and there's pedagogy. And those 3 things I said are powerful. Technology is running ahead of the others. I don't say it's better, but it's more got more momentum. And people then can say, well, the question to me was, how do I think it's evolved in the last 4 years since I wrote the book? And I would say the purpose of the book was to identify them and say they had to be merged and they had to be synergistic. NPDL does that. So I'm very pleased that we now have an NPDL, or deep learning, Engage the World, Change the Word formulation, and the set of conditions and the tools that systematically tell us what this actually is in practice, and that this is what we have now is the solution to the problem I posed in Stratosphere, the problem being 3 forces that aren't connected. They need to be connected. Now we have a slightly more combination model, but it's not that many pieces, and it really represents the synergy of those 3 forces that I first identified 5 years ago. So thanks very much. Have a great conference, and I know I will catch up to you sometime in the next 12 months.